The Rangers offense was rough the last 2 years, but is there somebody in the middle tier of free agency that might spark this offense? Talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covered this team for 12 seasons, including all 7 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're looking at some of the mid-tier free agent hitters who might be a fit, who might not be a fit, who might just be in that middle tier that could be a game changer for this Texas Rangers offense that is desperately in need of some help. Before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Now, the Rangers are in need of some help offensively. They have not been good at doing offense for the last 2 years. Although if you've watched this team the last 2 years, you are painfully aware of that fact. Had this been just a mediocre offense last year, I think this is at least a 90-win team, possibly, probably a playoff team, maybe even the AL West champion. But alas, that was not how things worked out. On yesterday's show, I talked about the top tier free agent hitters, basically the guys that are going to be the most expensive if the Rangers could and or should look at spending a whole big bundle of cash on those guys. And that's a possibility. I don't think it's a likelihood. I think it is a possibility that the Rangers go and do that. If you could go get a Kyle Tucker, that would be nice to get a Kyle Tucker to put out there in right field. I talked a little bit about the money situation on yesterday's show, but basically spitball it around to say that the Rangers have about 30 to 50 million, somewhere in that range, to spend this offseason. They will have to get at least one starting pitcher, if not 1.5. They will have to get a few bullpen pieces, but that kind of leaves them, and it's more reasonable to look at getting a bat that is in that kind of mid-tier kind of price range. If the Rangers get a bat at all, it is possible, although I don't think likely, it is possible the Rangers do nothing with their offense this offseason in terms of the free agent market, because the Rangers don't have any everyday starters who are going to be free agents. There are no bats that are leaving. Who they have is who they are, unfortunately, kind of stuck with, unless they want to designate somebody for assignment or just trade somebody off. I think it is more likely that Adolis Garcia would get traded off than just straight up designated for assignment. Jonah Heim, TBD at this point, but I think Higgy is going to be the everyday starting catcher because he was fine to pretty good last year. Heck, even a lot of the bench roles are kind of spoken for, at least to some degree. Josh Smith is going to be that super platoon kind of a guy. We're still probably going to see Jock Peterson at DH because you're stuck with that $18 million contract unless he, for some reason, decides to opt out this year, which I don't see happening. But we've also got some other bench guys that could be sticking around, guys like Cody Freeman. We could see more of Michael Hellman next year. I think that's likely possible, if not likely, for next season. Maybe we'll see some of Billy McKinney back. I don't know exactly what it's going to be the case for the rest of those little rascals, but at the very least, Zeke Duran, Josh Smith, Cody Freeman, Michael Hellman, I think those guys are all going to factor in. But if the Rangers want to do something drastic, I think there are some really good options at the kind of middle tier of this free agency market. Now, by mid tier, I just mean less than $100 million and more than, I'd say, between $20 and $99 million. That's kind of where at least my brain goes for the kind of mid tier. Not to say these are mid players, middling or bad players. Even if you're a middle of the pack Major League Baseball player, you're a very good baseball player. But the Rangers could use some upgrades. And I'm going to start with a guy who is the most intriguing. Might actually not be an upgrade, but might be a huge upgrade. That is Luis Robert Jr., the center fielder of the Chicago White Sox. Now, he is not officially a free agent just yet. He has been shopped around for quite some time. He was such an intriguing young player back in 2020, signing an extension before he even made the major leagues. He was an all-star in 2023. He finished top 12 in MVP voting that year. He won a Silver Slugger that year. He won a Gold Glove his rookie year in 2020. And he was electrifying. I mean, truly an electrifying player. Still is an electrifying player with top tier raw power. He is incredibly fast, and he is a very good defender out there in center field. But the man swings and misses like there is no tomorrow. And the batting average, the contact skills are just, they're not that great. They are not particularly great, not even good. They're bad. I'm being a little blunt. They're bad. The pitch recognition at times is bad. The walk rate is fine this year. Has not been a particular strong suit in seasons past. But this is a guy who has got a track record of not being particularly healthy. This last year was the second most games that he's played in a regular season. The most was 145. This past year, he played 110. He had a 1.4 baseball reference for, which is exactly what he had the season before. The last 2 years, his OPS has been below 700. He has had 14 home runs in each of the last 2 seasons, not combined, but each. He has had 14 this year, 14 last year, a career high of 38 in 2023. That was when he was healthy. That was when he was an all-star. He had a 5-win season that year. And he's just gone pretty quickly downhill since then. I mean, in 2024, he was just having a really terrible season for the White Sox after his career best year. Only played 100 games that year. He has just been hurt and not great for the last couple of seasons. But there's a lot of room for upside there. The raw athleticism this is a kind of player that you don't get a chance on fixing very often. You don't get a chance to have this player in your organization with this kind of raw skill set. He is one of one, basically. There are not, I don't know of any players with this kind of level of athleticism. And the bet you would be making here on Luis Robert Jr. is that, well, he's young. I mean, he just turned 28 a couple of months ago. He's going to be heading into his age 29 season. He has been in the big leagues for quite some time. And you're banking on, hey, the White Sox are a trash fire of an organization. Maybe he was hitting so poorly and playing so poorly because they don't know what they're doing. They are not a stable organization. They don't know how to teach hitting very well. Now, that's possible. That is a big gamble because according to Spotrac, which I don't think this is an accurate number. I don't think this is what he's going to get in free agency because this would put him in the top tier market. But Spotrac has him projected for a 6-year, $131 million deal. That's $22 million per year. But then some of the comps that they put on similar contracts, they put Tyler O'Neill on there, which yikes, that is not an encouraging sign. A lot of these guys are kind of in the yikes territory. Chris Bryant, they put as a similar kind of a comp. That's not accurate really at all because Chris Bryant was not an outfielder, let alone a center fielder. He had won an MVP. He had won a World Series. He had won a Rookie of the Year. And then he didn't have nearly the injury history leading up to that 7-year, $182 million deal that for some reason the Rockies signed back in 2018, 19, 2022. I don't remember when it was. It's been a long time, and we have not seen a lot of Chris Bryant since then. But the other comps are guys like Jorge Soler, Kyle Schwarber. But the one I thought was most interesting, the one I think would most similarly reflect what Luis Robert Jr. would actually get in free agency is a guy who I talked about on yesterday's show. It's Cody Bellinger. Bellinger had just gotten DFA'd by the Dodgers after 3 years after winning an MVP. Now, Luis Robert Jr. hasn't won an MVP. He hasn't hit those heights that Bellinger did hit, but he hasn't quite fallen as low as Bellinger did at times. Bellinger got a 3-year, $80 million year deal, $80 million total deal that's averaging about $27 million per season. I think that's more along the lines of what Luis Robert Jr. will get. Cody Bellinger had an opt-out after every single season. I don't know exactly what the structure of that deal might look like, but I think something in the 1 to 3 years higher average annual value with ability to opt out is something that Luis Robert could command. I mean, he is a Boris client, so they tend to get a lot of money in their free agency. I mean, Boris does a great job of getting the most money for his clients, and you're banking on saying, hey, we can teach him how to hit better than the White Sox could teach him how to hit. We can have a more conducive environment, conducive to winning than the White Sox ever really gave him. He did get a taste of the postseason in 2020 with the White Sox, but it has been a lot of losing ever since. I don't know if this is a fit necessarily because the Rangers already have a guy who has a lot of promise and has a pretty lengthy injury history in center field, and a guy who I trust to age his skill sets age better than I trust Luis Roberts in Evan Carter. But this is an interesting guy on this mid-tier kind of a list. I don't think that he's going to get anywhere near that, $100+ million. I don't think he's going to get 5-6 years. I think that would be a huge gamble by anybody. And I'm also not entirely sure he will be a free agent because he has a $20 million club option. He is not a $20 million a year player. So I think the White Sox are much more likely to just straight up decline that after having tried to shop him for a year and a half. Nobody has been a taker, but I think somebody could be a taker in free agency this winter, and it's possible. Maybe not likely, but it's definitely possible that it's the Rangers. Coming up, we're talking about another center fielder, one who was born in the DFW area, coming off of a career year that I'm also not quite sure what to make of. All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one that's making that late push. They've got all kinds of different odds. Let's check out something from the NFL this weekend. Let's see, Thursday night. No, let's do playoffs. To make the playoffs right now, the most favored to make the playoffs is not who you would think. It is the Indianapolis Colts at minus 3,000. Then the Green Bay Packers minus 2,200 and the Buffalo Bills at minus 1,600 to make the playoffs. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Shout out to everybody for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be talking about some low tier and also some trade targets that the Rangers could kick the tires on to help with this offense. Bat specifically, next week I'll probably look a little bit more at the starting pitching market, what all that looks like. You got to look forward to next week. Hopefully, when I am back in town, we will be maybe some more news, maybe some other things that are breaking. Actually, by next week, it will officially be the off season. The next time, or I guess the next to next time that I talk to y'all, because World Series ending on Saturday at the very latest, possibly on Friday. Now let's look at the next guy on this list, a guy who I also don't think is going to get exactly what Spotrac is projecting him. This is Trent Grisham. Try saying that 15 times fast. Trent Grisham is an outfielder for the New York Yankees who grew up in the DFW Metroplex. He had a lot of success out of high school, was drafted in the first round out of Richland High School in North Richland Hills in the DFW area, back by the Milwaukee Brewers in 2015. He was the 15th overall pick. He has been a two-time Gold Glover. He, I think, should have been an all-star this year. I mean, he had a fantastic season, the highest Baseball Reference War season of his career, a 3.5 win season in 143 games, blew by, actually doubled. He doubled his career best in home runs for a single season this year. His career high before this year, 17, back in 2022 with the Padres. This year, as a Yankee, 34 home runs. This man was annihilating baseballs all season long. And you may be thinking, oh, well, he's a left-handed batter. Okay, if you didn't know that, he's a left-handed batter, and he was playing in a very, very, very left-handed batter friendly, home run specifically friendly stadium in Yankee Stadium. You may be thinking, well, if he comes to Arlington, then he's not going to hit nearly as many home runs. And while the expected numbers on the home runs that he would hit at Globe Life Field versus Yankee Stadium is a little bit different, he actually did better on the road this year than he did at home. Pretty significantly. At home, he had a 702 OPS. On the road this year, he had a 904 OPS. He was also pretty consistent from the first half to the second half. It wasn't like, oh, he exploded in the first half. A little bit better in that first half, of 13-point higher OPS of 817 in the first half versus 804 in the back half. But this guy was pretty darn consistent. He didn't have any months that he really dropped off a cliff. He had a couple of down months. In June, it was a little bit tough on him. He had a 716 OPS in September/October, but he had a 900 OPS in the month of August, a 1,000 OPS, 1,009 OPS in the first month of this season, where he was hitting 292. I mean, this guy really turned it on this year. He has always been someone who has played great center field defense. This year, that wasn't the case as much. He's not old, so I'm thinking maybe it's something injury related this year. This is the first time his sprint speed was well below average. The outs above average was a little bit below the average fielder in center field. I don't know exactly why that is, but he was hitting a lot better this year. He has always been a guy who has had a great walk rate. He is, not great at not striking out, but he knows the strike zone. He's disciplined in the strike zone. He did a much better job this year of pulling the ball in the air and with authority. That leads to some good outcomes. That's why he was able to hit so many more home runs this year than he was in seasons past. He's projected to sign a 4-year, $48 million deal, according to Spotrac. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, because some of the other comps that they had to pull that number out of thin air one of them was Tommy Edman, and Tommy Edman plays 17 different positions, and he's also, well, he's about the same age as Trent Grisham, but the offensive upside with Grisham, Edman never really had a season like we just saw from Trent Grisham. Maybe Cedric Mullins' 1 year, $8.7 million deal is kind of close to that. Maybe he signs a 2-year, 3-year. I think 4 years is entirely possible. I think $48 million is a little bit on the high side. I don't know if I trust him to repeat a 34 home run season. That seems like asking a bit much, but he's not old. He is pretty young. There are a lot of guys who are below 30 in this free agent class who are hitting free agency at their physical peak, which is a great thing, but it's also going to mean longer and larger contracts. I think Trent Grisham is an interesting option. He also wasn't that much worse against lefties than you would typically expect. He was significantly better against righties, but he's just kind of about what you expect of a 650-ish OPS against left-handed pitching as a left-handed hitter. I don't know that I love it, but I'm interested in it. I am very interested in this signing for the Texas Rangers. I don't know how much of a fit it is, but after the season he had this year, if he could get anything close to that, if the Rangers could get anything close to that level of production, that is a massive, massive upgrade in their lineup that they pretty desperately need. The next guy on this list is a former Mariner, a guy who, really, a lot of these guys are just very intriguing, and I don't know quite what to make of them. This guy is Josh Naylor, who is 30, heading into his age 29 season, coming off of a season where he split time between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Seattle Mariners. Had some incredible moments in the postseason, and is just a really intriguing player. I think the concept of Josh Naylor gets skewed more so in favor of the reality of Josh Naylor. People are more thinking of Josh Naylor as, oh, he's this big first baseman. He's a big beefy boy, so he must hit for a lot of power and, draw some walks and, not hit for average and blah, 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 blah. No, he is not really the stereotypical first baseman. He is a guy who hits more for average. He is also very slow. He does not strike out. He only has 130-plus homer season, and he had 20 homers this year. But the thing that is most intriguing and odd about Josh Naylor is that you look at his sprint speed on Baseball Savant, he's in the 3rd percentile. He is in the bottom 3% of the slowest people in Major League Baseball. And yet, he had 30 stolen bases this year. 30 stolen bases while being unbelievably slow. He is an incredible base runner, and a sign that you do not have to be a burner to be a good base runner. And, just because you're fast does not necessarily mean you are a good base runner. He is a smart, heady base runner. He studies these pitchers incredibly well. He knows so much detail about the different moves that each pitcher has and when to get a read on them and when to, take off. He gets incredible jumps because you need to. If you were that slow, there is not a whole lot of margin for error, just making up for it with your speed. And he was incredibly effective on the base pass this year. A 815 OPS, a 295 batting average, a 353 on base percentage. He's a guy who walks a whole lot, does not strike out, and does a good job of barreling the baseball. Not the most raw power, but enough. I think he's an intriguing look if the Rangers want to kick the tires on a first baseman. He's not the best first baseman in this class. No, that is probably almost assuredly Pete Alonso, who I think is going to get a lot more money than Josh Naylor, because if you sign a guy to be a first baseman, you pay him a bunch of money, you expect dingers. Josh Naylor doesn't necessarily bring that, but he is still a valuable, good player. He's projected to sign a 3-year, $45 million contract this offseason. I would be fine with that for a first baseman. Maybe it's a bit much. Maybe Jake Burger gets you the approximation of Josh Naylor. I think it's possible for Jake Burger to have about a 3-WAR season next year, which is what he did this year, maybe 2.5, 3. That's about what he averages, is a 1.8 baseball reference WAR season per year. I think Jake Burger can definitely do that next year and provide a whole lot more pop, a whole lot less in terms of the not striking out. Jake Burger is going to give you a whole bunch of strikeouts. Josh Naylor is not. Defensively, I really love what Jake Burger does, and Josh Naylor is also pretty darn good defensively. And Jake Burger, who is also a big beefy boy, but the fast variety of big beefy boy, but not quite as good of a base runner as we have seen Josh Naylor, at least in the stolen base department. For that reason, I think I'm out, but I am curious at what it would take and if the Rangers would kick the tires on Josh Naylor. Coming up, we're going to talk about 2 more guys, including the guy who probably has the hardest contract to project what the heck is he going to get. Another guy whose positional versatility is odd, but he has a very specific skill set. Talk about that and more right after this. The show is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to just pick more or less on 2-player stats. And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. You can play any PrizePicks anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using PrizePicks during football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Mahomes, Steph Curry, to see how my predictions play out. The new stacks feature in-game is a game changer. You can now pick more or less on guys like Cooper Flagg's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Monday's show, I'll be back and looking at some of these different tiers of starting pitchers. Also, at some point next season, I will hopefully, almost assuredly, be having Grant Schiller on to talk about the minor league season and look back on our debutante draft, see who won that this year. I believe I won last year's and Grant won the year before. And I honestly cannot remember if any of the guys that we drafted ended up making their big league debuts this season. But it could be a 0-0 debutante draft, or one guy we picked had negative WAR. I think that might end up being the case, because that has definitely been a thing to decide it in seasons past. But that's what you have to look forward to next week on Locked On Rangers. Now, the next guy on this list is a guy who was traded at midseason, another first base type. That is Ryan O'Hearn. Ryan O'Hearn had a really good season last year between the Orioles and the Toronto Blue Jays. No, the San Diego Padres. And he was really a big part of the reason why they were able to surge in that second half. He was just crushing it at the deadline and made it to the All-Star team with Baltimore, a 2-WAR season in 94 games. Baltimore, 2.4 WAR on the full season, 17 bombs, a 281 OPS, and an 281 batting average, and an 803 OPS for the entirety of the season. This is a guy who is a very consistent hitter, a durable hitter, someone who you can really count on for just being above average bat. I mean, this year, a 125 OPS plus. The last 3 years, he has been at least 19% better than league average, basically since he got to Baltimore. He spent the bulk of his career at the beginning with the Kansas City Royals and just did not have a whole lot of success hitting. And literally in his first year in Baltimore, he had an OPS north of 800. He had a 760 OPS plus 760 OPS in 2024. And then this year, an OPS north of 800, about 14, 15 home runs per season with Baltimore and San Diego the last 3 seasons. He has just been very good, very consistent. I kind of wanted the Rangers to just kick the tires on maybe what it would look like to bring him in at the deadline. The Rangers decided, nah, we don't want to kick the tires on that. I don't think it'd be worth it. He's projected to sign a 2-year, $23 million deal. I think that's fine value for a first baseman, a guy who you know who's going to be pretty solid, at least starting caliber first baseman. Overall, would have brought more WAR to this team than what Jake Burger did on the whole this season. I don't know if the Rangers are looking to replace their first baseman. I don't think that they necessarily are, but there's another guy who I am definitely intrigued about this offseason. Next guy on this list is probably the most intriguing. He is projected to sign the second biggest deal of anybody on this list, but again, I'm not sure how much stock I'm putting in some of these projections by Spotrac. That's right, it is Luis Arias, the most interesting man in baseball, and I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment, although I kind of do. The guy who's spent time between second base and first base has played neither well. A guy who is quite portly, who is not fast, who does not hit home runs, who does not walk. He also does not strike out, and he hits a lot of singles. If singles are your jam, if you are a batting average nut, Luis Arias is a guy who you're like, this is the guy who plays baseball right. This is the guy who knows how to hit. And this past year was it was not great for Arias. He is an interesting player in that he only does really 2 things well. He only does one thing well, and it does not striking out count as doing one thing well. I guess it kind of also does. So maybe he does 2 things well. The man gets hits. He gets a lot of hits, a career 317 batting average, including a career best season of 354 back when he was playing with the Marlins in 2023 under, you guessed it, Skip Schumacher. That was an incredible season for him. He won a Silver Slugger despite only hitting 10 home runs because nobody at second base really hit all that many home runs. Last year, he had 8 home runs, which is the second best mark of his career. The second best mark in the triples category as well. 4 triples, 30 doubles, 181 hits, led the National League, and a 1.3 baseball reference score because he doesn't provide all that much value. He's not getting on base. He's not stealing bases. He's not getting a whole bunch of extra base hits because he doesn't have the speed to do so. He is not homering because he is not trying to homer. He is trying to hit a lot of singles. And last year, the guy who predominantly focuses on batting average only hit 292, which is the worst mark of his career. Kind of impressive that that's the worst mark of his career, but it's also not what you're looking for when you are a guy who is basically a one-trick pony, and that one trick is just hit singles. You need to hit just a few more singles. Now, I am not thinking the Rangers are going to look at him. I hope not. There was a lot of talk about the Rangers focusing on contact first approach, which scares the bejeepers out of me because you have got to hit the long ball in the postseason. It is impossible to string enough singles together against the best of the best of the best pitchers that you are facing in the postseason. That is why home runs win the day in the postseason, and it is why I am very much not interested in the Rangers kicking the tires. Don't even sniff around Luis Arias. Let him go somewhere else. Let some old school owner who's like, all that matters is batting average and singles. Let them go spend $70 million on Luis Arias. Rangers, go elsewhere. But speaking of the opposite of Luis Arias, a guy who has a definite position, who does not hit a whole bunch of singles, hits a bunch of dingers, that is Eugenio Suarez, a guy who has been one of the most consistent power hitters. If you're talking about just the amount of home runs that this guy has hit every single season, his 162 game average is 32 bombs. He averages 32 bombs a year, coming off of a career high 49 home runs between Arizona and Seattle. Seattle traded him away after 2023 because they're like, you making about $12 million, that's too much for us. That's too rich for our blood. And then in 2024, he had a 3-win season with Arizona. He had 30 bombs. He had 100 ribbies. He was awful in the first half and the best hitter in baseball in the second half. And then this year, he was incredible in the first half, a near 900 OPS at the break at the end of July when Arizona traded him to Seattle. And then he was much less great for Seattle in the regular season, had the most iconic swing in Mariners history, that go-ahead grand slam in the ALCS against Toronto. They did not end up winning, but Genie is a fan favorite in Seattle. I don't see a scenario where Mariners fans don't like riot and burn down the stadium if they don't bring back Eugenio Suarez. He's 34 years old. He plays third base. He plays a good third base as well. He's not just a bad defender over there. He hits the crap out of the baseball, hits a lot of home runs, projected to sign a 2-year, $30 million deal. As much as I love Josh Smith and as much as I really, really, really love what Josh Young is, and I think by the end of that 2-year deal, Josh Young would be better. I'm not leaving out the possibility that the Rangers go and sign a third baseman. I think it's possible. And if he signs a 2-year, $30 million deal, I bet he gets more than that. I bet he gets somewhere in the 2 years, $40 million, or maybe 3 years, $50 million kind of a range. But Genie is a very good hitter, a very good, consistent home run hitter. But he is a guy who is one of the streakiest hitters in all of baseball, because he will have 2-3 months where he looks awful. And then he will immediately follow that up by 2-3 months where he looks like nobody can get him out. And all he does is hit a bazillion dingers. Now, there's only 2 guys left on this list. And I think they might make maybe not the most sense, but a whole lot more sense than some of these other guys. JT Realmuto, who is a very old catcher, who has been the best catcher in baseball for a long time, heading into his age 35 season. He has been one of the most consistent catchers in baseball for the last half decade. He has been incredible, but he is a little bit on the older side. And guys like that, when you catch that many games, it just takes a toll on you. And JT Realmuto has caught a lot of games. This year was a real down year for him. A 700 OPS on the season, a 2.5 win season, where in the past he's averaged around 3 to 5 to 6 wins. His 162 game pace for Baseball Reference WAR is 4.6. So he averages a 4.5 win season. That is, again, per 162, and no catcher is playing 162 games a year anymore, especially not as they enter their mid to late 30s. Projected to sign a 2-year, $26 million deal. I think the Rangers would at least look at this. He had just 12 home runs last year, just a 700 OPS, which is the lowest of his career since 2015, his first full season in the big leagues, back when he was a member of the Miami Marlins. That has been a long time for him. I think it would make a lot of sense for the Rangers to at least sniff around here if the Rangers want to just cut bait on Jonah Heim, which I think they might. Would you rather have Jonah Heim for 1 year at $6 billion or JT Realmuto, 2 years, $26 million? I think the answer is pretty clear where I would be leaning. And then the last one, Harrison Bader, 2 years, $20 million. I think I might talk about him more in tomorrow's episode as the top end of the bottom tier, because we are already out of time. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.